Homeland and Ablat Gemara. We are today's daf is daf Chaf Hey, and we learned the Mishnah yesterday. A machlek is between Rab Tarfon and the Chachamim, which we already had on a number of occasions. Rab Tarfon holds that even though keren, if an animal behaves in an abnormal way and intends to cause harm, in the Rishus Harabim you're liable, but in the Rishus Harabim you only pay half a nezek, or in wherever keren takes place, the first three times you pay half a nezek, and the fourth time you pay the nezek shalom, or according to Rashi, the third time in Rava. But Shem Regel, you don't pay in Rishus Harabim at all, you only pay in a Rishus HaYachid. Tarfon says that if the animal was trespassing, he entered the Rishus HaYachid, then keren also you pay the full nezek. And he made a Kavul Chayman. If Shem Regel, which is so strict in the Shus Yachid, yet exempt the Shus Rabim, legal Keren, which is far stricter than Shem Regel, because Keren pays in the Shus Rabim, even though it's happening, but you pay. Then surely in the Shus Yachid, where Shem Regel is paying, surely you should be paying the Nezek Shalom. And the Chachamim said, Daya Lova Min Adin Lias Kanadin, which is very important because that's what today's Gemara is going to be about. Daya, the Kata Daya is that when you make a Kavul Chaymer, then even though the thing is stricter than the original point that you're learning from, but you cannot make it halachically any stricter than where you're learning from. All you can do is compare it to that. So therefore, since you're learning from keren, and keren in Shus Harabim only pays chatzi nezek, so keren in the Shus and trespassing also you only pay chatzi nezek. Rav Tarfon says, I agree with the principle of dayoy, but not always, not where it undermines the kavul chaymer. Because to tell me that a keren pays in a private property, with trespassing half a nezek, I don't need a kavul chaymer. It's obvious. The Torah doesn't make any distinction where the keren took place. You pay anywhere. So if I'm having a kavul chaymer, the only thing it could teach me is you got to pay the full nezek. You want to use the dayoy to tell me that no, you only pay half a nezek. So what I need a kavul chaymer for? So where the dayoy undermines the entire kavul chaymer, we dismiss the dayoy. But otherwise, the principle I agree with dayoy. Now, today's Gemara is going to be talking about this kavul chaymer dayoy. So we're going to have three opinions. We can have the opinion of Chachamim that says you always said dayoy in all circumstances, even if it undermines the kavul chaymer. You have Rab Tarfon that says I agree with the principle of dayoy, but not where it undermines the kavul chaymer. And then we're going to have another Tana who says I don't believe in dayoy at all. I don't believe in dayoy at all. So, and we're going to learn a little bit about Tumah today, so you have to bear that in mind. Says the Gemara. First of all, Rav Tarfon, let's say dayoy. Rav Tarfon believe in dayoy, but dayoy that I see. The whole concept of dayoy we learned from the Torah, says the Gemara, Chafei and Aleph. We learned the whole concept from dayoy. The Tanya we learned, Medin Kavul Chaymer Kesad. Where do you learn how to do Kavul Chaymer? When Miriam went ahead and said Lashon Hara, slandered Moshe Rabbeinu for separating from his wife Mitzvah, Hashem said to Moshe, if her father would have spat on her face, we have time. I'll tell you a beautiful pshat on what the conversation here was. But if the father spat her, she was yummy. Then she would be, humiliated for 7 days. Nu surely should be put away for 14 days, double. No more than father, 7. Why should it be double? So Taisa is a very interesting thing. Why should it be double? Generally speaking, a stricter thing, the next number is double. But Taisa says every person has 3 partners. The father gives 5 parts to the person, the mother gives 5 parts to the person, and the Abishah gives 10 parts to the person. So if the father, if you shame the father is spanning you, you're shamed for 7 days. So the Abishah who gives you double should be 14 days. Anyway, at the end of the day, she was only locked up for 7 days. So we see that dayoy, that's where we learned the idea of dayoy. It's in the Torah. So the Gemara, what's Tarfon going to respond to that? You're right. Tarfon agrees to the principle of Parak. Let's say dayoy went. Tarfon said there's no such thing as dayoy hechdim after kavul chaymer, where you undermine the entire kavul chaymer, like we just explained when it came to keren in trespassing. What's the point of a kavul chaymer? Learning from keren Shus Harabim to tell me that you pay. Of course you pay. Why shouldn't you pay? To tell me that you pay half a nezek, you always pay half a nezek. Must be to tell you full nezek. And if you're going to tell me dayoy that it's no better than a keren Shus Harabim, then what I need a kavul chaymer for? But if you don't undermine the kavul chaymer, then he agrees to the principle of dayoy. What about in the case of Miriam? Hasam Shiva the Shechina like Siva. Over there, we need the kavul chaymer for the very essential point you want to make. Where does it say that something like that you get secluded for 7 days with the Shechina? Abraham told Moshe Rabbeinu to separate, and you made fun of it. Also, the kavul chaymer comes along and telling you what the kavul chaymer says it should be worse than the father. I see Arbasa, it should be 14. So Daya comes along. Daya says, let's limit the Kalvachimer. Apik Shiva, Uki Shiva. Take away 7, because you can't have more than the original point you're learning from, but leave it 7. But the Kalvachimer taught you something. Even 7 days is something new. The idea of Chatzi Nezek, we know you have to pay. The Torah doesn't tell you where to pay the Chatzi Nezek. A Keren pays Chatzi Nezek everywhere. So what I need the Kavuchayim for? But I see Chatzi Nezek Acharin. It tells you in you're trespassing, you don't pay half the Nezek, you pay the full Nezek. But Nasa Nezek Shalom. See, if you're going to say, let's use Daya and bring it back down to half a Nezek. After Kavuchayim, then you undermine the entire Kavuchayim. What are you Kavuchayim for? No, Rabbanon, Tam is a valid point. Rabbanon, Shiva the Shechina Ksiva. No, they disagree. They say we already know by the Shechina also 7 days. So once we know, and let's see in a second how, because it says a pasuk. It says in the pasuk, the Abisha says, "Tisagya Shiva's Yamim." You should lock off 7 days. So we know you should lock 7 days. So what's the Kavul Chaim before the Abisha says, "Vavi Yodak Yodak"? To take it up from 7 days to 14, and then at the end of the day, we only gave us 7. That means the Dayoi completely undermined the Kavul Chaim, and you still say Dayoi. That's what, because they say 7 days we didn't know. But Abtarfin, Ahud Tisagir Dashin Dayahu. That's exactly why we need Tisagir. The Abish is telling you, even though you should be 14, but Tisagir only 7. Why? Because of Dayah. Because really you had no idea that you have to lock up at all. The Kavuchayim is telling you, no, if for a father you lock up, surely for the Abish you lock up. So the Kavuchayim we need for the whole concept. And then Dayah comes along, but Tisagir Shivas Yama teach you, let's use Dayah, because let's use Dayah. That's when we use Dayah. And the Rabban say, no, it says twice. And the second Vatisagi Miriam is for to teach you Daya. And the first one is to tell you that that's a din. So therefore, by telling us that's a din, what's the Kabul Chaymer then do afterwards if we bring it back down to 7? Nothing. Tells you that Daya is effective even when it contradicts the entire Kabul Chaymer. But Abtarfin says, no, Ahud, I feel Daya. No, I need twice. One that in this case, you say Daya, and one that Kol Kul. Whenever you have a Kal Chaymer, we will use the rules of Daya as long as it doesn't undermine the Kal Chaymer. Because you shouldn't think the Abishataka wanted it to be 14 days, and we don't say Daya at all. How come the Abishat limited to 7? Because of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's embarrassing. Moshe Rabbeinu's sister should be locked up on account of him. But maybe generally speaking, no such thing as Daya. That will employ Daya everywhere, but only when it does not undermine the Kal Chaymer. Says the Gemara, okay, so we have two opinions now. They both agree to Daya. The question is, will you use Daya where it completely undermines the Kal Chaymer? Tam says no, and the Chacham says yeah. Comes along that Papa says, Daya. I have a Tana that Taka doesn't agree with the whole concept of Daya at all. Even if it does not undermine the Kal Chaymer. The Tanya, we learn, it says, you have a thing called a keri, and you have a thing called a zav. A zav is an emission, and a keri is semen. So semen is a little bit thicker than the emission of keri. So we know that if an ordinary person has a keri, he becomes tamei. The question is, how do we know if a zav has a keri, becomes tamei as well? Maybe because he's already tamei for a zav, that's it. The keri doesn't add anything. As the Gemara Tan, we learned that keri, bezav, minayin, how do you know that keri is by a zav? He also becomes tamei. A keri for having that kind of mission of semen, the dinu, because the Kabul Chaymer. Ma tar, if a tardik person spits, what's the status of that spit? Nothing. It's tar. Tame betame. If a tamadik person spits, what's the status of that spit? It is tame. I know tame. Sorry, it's tame. Is tame betar? What about a tardik person who has keri? He's tamei b'maga masa. If somebody touches the semen, or if you're lifting it, you're not even directly touching it, you're just carrying it in a box or something in your tamei. Is einudin she tamei b'tamei. So surely a tameidik person who has keri, surely should that keri should produce tumah maga masa. The kamaisa le b'maga b'masa. We can use the Kabul Chaymer to tell you not only if you touch it, but even if masa, even if you just indirectly lifting it, you also become tamei. Not why name? Let us say ahani Kabul Chaymer lemaga. Let us say the Kabul Chaymer. We don't know anyway that a zav is tamei for anything of keri. So let's use the Kabul Chaymer just for maga, and ahani daya lafuki masa. Let daya come along and say, but not masa. But if you're carrying, it shouldn't come down. Limit the Kabul Chaymer. But in other words, if a toidig person has keri, all he's matame is maga. He's not Matami Masa. So where are you learning from a Toidiga person? And you're saying that a Toidiga person is Kedi Tummy, so by a Toidiga person also. So since by a Toidiga person Kedi, since that's him a Toidiga person, so the only tumor that the Kedi does is Maga. So why don't we say that by a Zov who has a Kedi, it's a Kedi, that the tumor should also be limited to Maga? Let's say Daya, Lova, Dinas cannot, but we don't. We say even Masa. And here we need the Kavachim. Over here, you're not going to undermine the Kavachim if we're going to limit it to Maga. Because even Maga we wouldn't have known by a Talmudic person. It doesn't say to tell you that a Zov becomes Talmud with Kedi. So we need the Kavachim even to teach you Maga. So in that case, Rab Tarfon and the Chum both agree where you need the Kavachim is teaching you something anyway. Then we'll say, Daya, limited to whatever the original case you're learning from, limited to that thing. And over here, you're going a step further. By a Toidiga person, Kedi is only Matami Maga, and you're using it now by Zov to be Matam, because Zov generally is Matam and everything, Matami Maga and Masa. Where's the Daya? So therefore, Lafuki Masa. So Daya doesn't believe in Daya. Are you going to tell me maybe we don't know Maga anyway? Why should you think Zov is not Matami Maga? If a Toidiga person, the Torah doesn't limit Zov, Kedi, Dafka to a Toidiga person, it just says if a person sees Kedi. What Azov is not a person, so Maga we know. So the Kavachim is only coming to teach us Masa, and therefore we said forward. Tarfon says where the Kavachim teaches us something. The only thing that it teaches you something new. You can't use the word Daya because what's the point of Kavachim? No, it's not true. Itzrich. I do need Maga for a Talmud for Zov to tell me that his Kedi is Talmud. Because I would have thought the pasuk says if there's a person that suddenly has a sudden mission, Mikra Laila, sudden mission. And then so on, so on. See, me shekerev goyim loy. In other words, this event is what makes you tummy. Yotzeh he was tummy anyway. He was tummy anyway. As a zav. So we would have thought there's no tummy at all. So the Kavachim comes to tell you that even Maga, your tummy, his kedi is if you touch it, is tummy Maga. So how do you also learn Masa, which is not from the original din of a Torah? So Gemara says, where does it say that? Mikra Laila, where does it say here that this is what caused you tummy? You weren't tummy from anything else. Where does it say that at all? Another Gemara is saying here, there's no raya, because maybe we knew anyway Maga is tummy by a Zov. But where does it say a Zov is not tummy Maga? He's a person. Or his Zov is not a Ish, anybody. And therefore, if we have a Kavachim, it must be to teach us something new. What's the only new thing? Masa, carrying. So therefore, you can't, according to Rav Tarfon, this Tana might be Rav Tarfon or like Rav Tarfon, you can't come and say, oh, but Daya, you can't be stricter than the original. Over here, yes, you can, because otherwise, what's the point of the Kavachim? Maga touching, he's a person like anybody else. Masa we're learning. Yeah, so it must be teaching Masa. So you can't come along and say, Daya, limit what you're learning Masa. The Gemara says, "Man Tana," and who is the Tana? The Shamalei Damashim Zera Shazov Metami. The Masa. Now the Gemara digresses for a minute. Who Taka holds? Who is the Tana? The author holds that by a Zov, that his kedi is stricter than an authoritative person. That not only Maga touching, but even Masa lifting. So the Gemara says, neither of them. What's the story? Now we learn. The Shichva Zera of a Zov. Metame. Metame b'maga is tummy only touching. Ain't metame masa. Rabbi clearly holds that if you lift the shichva zera of a zav is no different than a shichva zera of a Torah person, and then you're not become tummy. Rabbi Shua says no, af metame b'masa, but he doesn't say because of a kavachim or because he believes that a Talmudic person his shichva zera is stricter than a Torah person. He says must be some of the zav is also drips. This tagged onto it. So what makes it tamei masa? Not the shichva zera, but this other fluid that's there, the other emission that's there, that's tagged onto it. It's a little bit piece of some remnants there. So in principle, nobody holds that shichva zera itself is tamei masa. I can come to some of the it's always possible not to have that thing tagged on. Not for that reason, like. So who holds of this Kavachim we learned before? Who's the author of that says that by a Zav, because generally he's stricter because his Zav touch or lift your tamei, so too the Shicha Zera that emanates from him, the same thing that is emitted from him, the same thing happens. Who holds that? Elahai Tanu, it's the following Tanu. That now we learned. L'mayla mehen, he said, all these different levels of Tum. It says there, talks about Sheret, Shicha Zera, and Tommy Mace. It says Zoiv Zov, even stricter than all that is the Zov, that emission that comes from a Zov. The Roikoi and his spittle, the Shichva Zaroi, everything that comes from a Zov. It mentions the Shichva Zaroi. Umeime Raglav and his urine, the dam hanida and the dam of a nida for women's asova. Mitamin bein b'maga bein masa. Clearly here it says shichva zaroi. The shichva zera of azov is different than the shichva zera turning a person that is mitamin, not only touching but also lifting. The Gemara says that proves nothing. The dilma hachanami, maybe the reason why they're so machmir by the shichva zera of azov is not because they believe in this kal v'chayim, but because other reason we said Abishua. Because the fishy ef ziva. Maybe the reason is because there's maybe some of the ziva is attached. Some of that other zav is attached to it. Exactly. So not because in principle he agrees with the kal v'chayim every time. He just exactly. The Gemara says that can't be the reason. Why have a break? If you're telling me Zoiva shows Zov, and you're telling me the only reason why Shichva Zara is Tami B'Masa because it attaches some of that Zoiva, then the top of the page you should have said the following. These are the things of a Zov that's so strict. Zoiva shows Zov, and the next thing should have been Vish Shichva Zara, and then you jump to Spittle. By putting Spittle in between shows us that Shichva Zara is totally independent of Zoiva shows Zov. Another reason altogether. The Shichva Zara itself is Tami. Because we're learning out from this Takal V'chayim. That's why he mentioned spit first, because he established that the spit of a Zov is Batame B'maga or Masa, and therefore we learn from the spit of a Torah, the whole Takal V'chayim. Okay, so meanwhile, we haven't yet found a Tana who doesn't believe in the concept of Daya. Because we explained that in the case over there, no, there's over there it's different, like Tarfim, because we already know you tummy b'maga. The only thing the Kal V'chayim is teaching you that you tummy by lifting it, by masa. And if you're going to undermine and say Daya, there's no Kal V'chayim anymore. But you want to find me a Tana that doesn't believe in the whole principle of Daya. Let's find that. I'll find you a Tana. Hi Tana, like Daya. I found you a Tana. I'll find you a Tana that believe in Daya. And who's that? Even which does not undermine the Kal V'chayim, they don't believe in the principle of that. You have a Kal V'chayim, and there's something stricter, you can actually go the next step and say, and the consequences are also stricter. The Tanya we learned, methods, a mat. The maze, if you have a mat, when it comes to a mace, that become, in the oil, let's say, by a mace, it says, kol beged, we learn our laws of Tumah when they went to war by Mitzvah. So the whole beged, the whole klior. So we know that garments, we know that leather, they become kaveh. So the a mat is neither of them, and it's not a wooden keli as well. So how do you know that in the oil a mess? If there's a corpse lying in a room, everything else inside becomes tummy. How do you know also this mat? The dinu makes sense. Interesting. Chitas. We learned that Rashi says that Yaakov went to get back to retrieve the pachim tanim, and here it says ma pachim tanim. Look at that. Madach the pachim tani, the small little jugs. I mean, the Mefarshim they talk about how it relates to Chanukah, the pach shel shemen. Anyway, that's chus. Ma pachim tani, madach the small jugs. Shetahoydim bezor. A pachim tani has a very narrow. We're talking about a clay cheres does not become tummy from outside, only becomes tummy from the inside. But it has a very narrow opening, so you can't put your finger inside. It cannot be metame. So therefore, madach pachim tanim shetohayim bezov. How's zoging mitar? You cannot be mitami from the outside. Cannot put his finger in the inside, and no shaking it. So therefore, what do you call it? So how does the pach tani become tummy? Mitami b'mes, yet it's sitting in the oil. Azov cannot be metame pachim tani because there's no way in mitzias, there's no way practical how you can do it. And yet inside, if it's sitting in the room where there's a corpse, it becomes tummy, right? So oil mess obviously is stricter than azov. Is method shemetame azov, so a method that azov is metame. So surely oil mess should be metame. We see that oil mess is stricter than azov. Azov cannot be metame pachim tani no matter what he does. The only time you can metame if you shake something is if I could have put my finger inside and touch it, so then I shake it, I'm also tummy. But since you cannot put your finger inside this pach cotton, you can't do it. So therefore, even his hesed, even shaking, cannot become tummy. But an oil mess is tummy. So surely when it comes to this mat, that azov can stand on it, can sit on it, and becomes tummy, surely it becomes tummy in oil mess. That's the kavuchemer. And what are we using it for? Now we know that azov is only tummy tumas erev, so that night, whatever he touches, but a tumas mess, you're tummy 7 days. What are we going to do with his methods? We're going to say now a method becomes tummy on mess. How long is a tummy for? If we're learning it from Zav, the din should only be Tamei Tumas Erev to that night. And yet the law is it's Tamei for 7 days. Bein Tumas Erev, Bein Tumas Shiva. So we're taking the Kavachimer and we're going way beyond the original point. Why should it be for Shiva? Let's say the Kavachimer is only for Tumas Erev. We need the Kavachimer for that. But Hani Daya, Shiva, and the Daya comes and brings it down, reduces it from 7 to 1, and that's it. On Malay, he said here, okay, you want to bring that as a proof. This question was already asked, or here it says Abnachumi. Abnachumi Bar Zechai already asked Abaya. And Abaya said, Tana memefes b'sheri ma'isla. We are learning, you thought we're learning from Zav, and we're talking about mace, and we're learning from Sheretz. We're learning from Sheretz, and that is, we're not learning Kavachimer, we're actually going to use a Gzeira Shava. And therefore, even though we're learning from Sheretz, it's a Gzeira Shava, we'll see in a minute which words it are, because called Kli Begin, or we'll use a Gzeira Shava, not a Kavachimer. Even though Sheretz is only over till night, Tumas Erev, and by a mace it's Tumas Shiva, but that's what Gzeira Shava does. Doin mina v'uki ba'asra. I will learn from you, and then I will apply it to the laws that apply here. Members of Machlekes, if doin mina umina, by Gzeira Shava, we have actually Machlekes. If you're learning from somewhere, do you compare it in every respect to that origin, or do we say I learned the principle from there, and now I bring it over here, and whatever it's over here? Exactly. So this Tana holds doin mina v'uki ba'asra. It's a Gzeira Shava from Sheretz. And because it's Shava from Sheretz, and now we're applying it to a mace, oil a mace, and therefore it's Tamei 7 days. Nothing to do with Kavachimer. Says the Gemara, Memphis b'Sheretz, but I know that what that at mat by a Sheretz v'dinu would make sense. So first let's establish by a Sheretz that Memphis is Matame. So we're going to learn Sheretz from Zav. Sheretz is also only Tumas Erev, so therefore there's no problem there. There's no dye or nothing else. It's the same thing. So ma pachi tana shetayim b'Zav. Paki time we just had established before, a Zav, it's clay, cannot be metameh, can't put your finger inside. Yet, Tamei in B'Sheretz, it becomes Tamei by a Sheretz. Why? Because what's the size? A Sheretz is metameh, even a lentil, and a lentil can fall inside. This jug, it might be narrow, but it still has an opening. Yeah, so it could fall inside. So by Zav cannot be metameh. There's pachkot get a sheretz can mefet shemetam bezav, and the zav is metami mefet sits on the standard midrash. And it did shemetam sheretz, surely sheretz. So we're learning sheretz from zav, and sheretz is the same thing. They're both tumas erev. And then once we've established that by sheretz it's tamei, now we're going to go ahead and use the Gzeira Shava to teach you by oil amet. Elamefet benes menayin. How do you know? Nemar, it says in the pasuk, it says beged v'oid, it says kol oid b'sheretz. It says by sheretz that what becomes tamei, anything made out of cloth material and made out of leather. And whenever beged v'oid b'mes, it says same thing by a mess. Is ma beged v'oid b'sheretz, just like by sheretz. Mefetz tamei, mefetz tamei. We established that through a kabel chaymer. Is av beged v'oid b'mes, mefetz tamei boy. So the same thing by a mess also. So we're learning mess from sheretz. And Sheretz Kavachimer from Zav. We thought that we're learning directly mace from Zav. And then we asked the question, but what about Daya? So we dismissed Daya. We said, nothing to do with that. You're literally wrong. We're learning Sheretz from Zav, and they're both the same Tumas Erev. And once we've established it by Sheretz, it's Tamei, now we jump to mace and say we have Gzeira Shava. And we're going to follow the opinion, as Gemara will explain in a minute, that says that Gzeira Shava, we take the principle from the original and we now adapt it to the new place that we are learning it to. And therefore, there it's 7 days, so we're going to compare it to 7 days. The Gemara explains, first of all, mufna. You're going to have to say that some of these words are extra. We have a rule that Gzeira Shava, you really can't ask any questions, and that's what the Torah wants. But you know when we say that, if the words are extra, Machlek is if you need the words extra on both sides or just words extra on one side. So we'll say, why did the Eibush put these extra words in the Torah to teach you this halacha? But if there's nothing extra and we still have a Shava, you can always ask a question, how can you compare? So you're going to have to say at least one of the sides is extra. Because if neither of the sides is extra, I can ask. You know why a sheretz is so strict that it's metame by this match? It came metame bekadosha. There's another stringency by sheretz. It's metame this lentil. The mess. However, when it comes to a mesh, ain't metame bekadosha. Mesh is not metame the size of a lentil. Ela bekazayis in the kazayis. So you have to say there's something extra. So which one is it? Which one is extra? So we say mechdi sheretz. Sheretz ishkish l'shichvaz. We know that Sheretz, the tomb of Sheretz, is very similar to the tomb of Shechvazera. And how do I know that? There's a passage where it says that any coin over there that is a tzaras or a zov and so on and so forth, and it talks about over there that he's also tummy in that same pasuk. And what's the tumah describes as shich v'zera. Or yish asher teitzi menu. And the samachlei in the next pasuk says, or yish asher yiga b'chol sheretz, or if he touches the sheretz. So we're comparing the tumah of sheretz to shich v'zera. And already by shich v'zera, the Torah already says what becomes tamei b'chol beged b'chol oil. If it has shich v'zera on it, because you have to wash it and rinse it. So we already have the concept, and if we're comparing, sheretz to shich v'zera, so I know whatever applies to shich v'zera, beged oil applies to sheretz. Why does the Torah by sheretz have to say also beged oil? It's extra. The teacher is Shabbat. The Kodesh Shalom Alishma. I'm not laughing at extra. It's only extra on the side of sheretz, but it's not necessarily extra on the side of a mace. Answer what? Is made in the one who said that even if it's only extra on one of the sides of the Gzerah Shavah is good enough, you can't ask any questions, fine. You don't ask any questions, shop it. Made in that even though one side is extra, the other side is not, I have a right to ask questions. And have a good question. Sheretz is stricter because it's matama, even the size of a lentil. So we say, Michael Mehmed, the mess, you can have to say that both sides are extra. Mechdi, I'll say, why? What's the extra about mace? Mechdi, mess also is compared to Shechozera, the Chesiv. But it says in Pasik that, but it talks about the coin there, what renders him tummy. One of the things is Shechozera, and it says also about the Geah, Bechol tummy nefesh, if he touches anyone tummy nefesh, or each should take him Shich in the same pasuk. So we see that Tamei Nefesh and Shich V'Zera are compared to each other. Then by Shich V'Zera it says what becomes Tamei, your garments and your oils. Is beged ba'oid the cost of the mess? Why do I need beged ba'oid? But it says by mess because it says also by chukah. It says there again there beged and oil and goat skin and wood and all that comes Tamei. What do you need that for? Shema Mina, it comes to teach you. That's extra on both sides. I've been moved from the Mishnah talking. But now what are we doing? We're learning from sheretz, which is only tummy till at night, and we're adapting it to mace, which is tummy 7 days. So Gemara says that's not so simple. The one who says that you learn from there and then you transfer it over to the other place. I understand, even though 7, yeah, it's good. No. If you're learning even Gzerah Shavah from somewhere, whatever the laws over there are, know it by mace also the method should only become tummy till at night. We're going to say then. Omar Rava says, Omar Kro. There's a pasuk. It says, "V'chibastem bigdeichem." It says you should rinse your clothes on the 7th day by Yom HaShvi. So it's a pasuk where it says, "Kol tmeya sha'atim etamim b'mes." Any tumah. Once you've established that the mace can make it tummy, then lo yipchus m'shiva. There's a custom. You can't make it less than 7 days. Okay, that finishes the subject over here. The subject over here. So therefore, we no longer have a Tana that doesn't believe in daya. Everyone agrees in the principle of daya. The only argument is, our Tarva says we're undermines the Kal Chayma, we're not going to apply daya, and the Chum say in all instances we'll apply daya. Now the Gemara goes back. So you made the Kal Chayma of Tarfa, Madach Keren, pays in the Shus Rabim, and Shevet doesn't. And so surely in the Shus Yachid you should pay for Keren, and how much? Nezek Shalom. So now the Gemara is going to say, let's make a number of Kal Chaymas using the logic of Kal Chayma as follows. So the Gemara now that we've established, okay, let's go to Kal Chaymas. Let's use the Kal Chayma the reverse. If Shen V'regel pays the full nezek in the Shus Yachid, and Keren, which is weaker, pays Chazal Shus Rabim, surely Shen V'regel should pay in the Shus Rabim as well. Uma Keren should be Shus Hanizik Ein Shal Chat Nezek. How much does Keren pay in the Shus Hanizik? Only half a nezek. And Shus Rabim is also Chayiv. So Shen V'regel, what does Shen V'regel pay in the Shus Yachid? Nezek Shalom. Obviously, Shushan Nezek Shalom, much stricter. So Ein Adin surely Shus Rabim Chayiv. So surely in the Shus Rabim they should be Chayiv. When I answer this, there's a custom. Amar Kra Ubiya Bizdei Acher. Sorry? That logic is a riff we talked about, yeah. But it doesn't say that in the Torah. Ubiya Bizdei Acher. The fact is, the pasuk says clearly, when do you pay for beer, b'shilach, or beer b'zdei acher? Only b'zdei acher in the nizik's domain. Okay, midei kula kamrinan. You think my kavochem was not that a shen v'regel should pay the full nezing shus rabim? Of course not. You're right. Maybe beer b'zdei acher come and tell you when do you pay shalom yishalom made the shadeyu only if you damage in the nizik's property. But if you do shus rabim, we're learning Kal V'Chayim with Keren, so you can't be stronger than Keren. What is Keren paying Shus Rabim? Half a nezik. So Shevet Egel should be half a nezik. The pasuk would be a b'zdei acher. That's talking about you don't pay a nezik shalom unless it's b'zdei acher, unless it's in the nizik's property. But in the street, pay half a nezik. Bava Kama Daf. On my cross, Gemara says no. It says in the pasuk that if the animal say gores or shoves and so on and so forth, and the animal dies, what do? You sell the animal that caused the damage. It says the v'chitzo is kaspa. You divide its money. What do you mean? The only time you pay half is this case, kaspoy. Obviously, the chitza is kesef, but we don't know what we're talking about. By saying kaspoy, the Torah is stressing that the only time you pay chatzi nezek is in the shazab is only by keren and not in any other case. And it's the achas to tell you, but you pay in his rishus. Okay, next question. Then let's go like this. That if Keren is stricter because you're paying a Shus Rabin, yet even in the Shus HaYachid according to Chacham, you pay only half a nezik, then surely Shem V'Egel, that's pot in the Shus Rabin, surely you should only pay half a nezik. The Gemara, Mikeren, Uma Keren, Shebeshus Rabim Chayeves, Beshus HaNezik, Einem Shem V'Chatz Nezik, yet what does Keren pay in if it trespasses according to Chachamim, the Tanna Kama? You only pay half a nezik. So Shem V'Egel, Shebeshus Rabim Petur is totally exempt. Ain't no surely Shebeshus HaNezik, Shem V'Chatz Nezik, only pay half a nezik. Makro. Very hard to understand anyone's question because the Torah clearly says Yishalem Tishlumim Aliyah. It says Shalom Yishalem, which sounds like you pay the full amount. You pay the full amount. Okay. Anyway, so Gemara continues. So we're just going through a number of possible Kavachimers. Now let's say, okay, so how do you know Keren pays Rabim? The Torah doesn't talk about it. So let's make a Kavachimer from Shem V'Egel, Madr Shem V'Egel, which is so strict, is Potter Shus Rabim, even though you're saying there's a logic to it. So surely Keren should be Potter Shus Rabim. If they trespass, you pay the full amount. Yet B'Shus Rabim Patura, you're exempt if it's in a public place. Keren goring, Shebeshus HaNizik Chatzin, all he pays is half the nezik. Ain't it in surely Shebeshus Rabim Patura? Surely he should be potter. On Makro, it says in the pasuk, it says you should divide the money and the gamas hameis yachzan, and you divide the thing. I remember Rashi, they makes a whole calculation how you work out these two cheshbonis. Anyway, it says yachzan, which is an extra pasuk. It already says the chitza is kasper, you divide the money. We say yachzan again, and it says the gamas hameis. It says the chitza is kasper, the gamas hameis, and also the animal that died. Why doesn't the rule have to say yachzan, the extra word? Ain't chatzi nezek chaluk. It's actually would tell you that you pay half the damage. I don't care where. Loy b'shus harabim, loy b'shus yachid. Makes absolutely no difference where it is. So the Gemara just a little bit further. Loy b'shus yachid. Gemara says, "Yehei adam chayiv b'koifer mekal chaymer." If a person, let's say, caused damage, you should pay koifer. If he did it deliberately. Let's say if he didn't warn a person, if he warned, we're trying to make all these kavachimis. Now we're talking about the damage of an adam. We say that a person who kills somebody, you kill somebody, an animal kills somebody, you pay kaif. If a person kills somebody, if he did it, with Adim, you get killed. If he did it with Shagig, you go to Golis. What about a person? There was no warning, so he doesn't get killed. He doesn't know what goes because it's amazing. Why doesn't he pay kaif? If a shoy, let's say, damages somebody, we learned yesterday. A shoy doesn't pay the 4 items. Yet if he kills a person, he has to pay that cancellation. A person, if he damages another person, he has to pay the 4 different kinds of, nezik, tzash, and sometimes boishes. Shame. Surely he should be stricter than an animal. Surely he should pay kaifer. On Makro, again, we have sukya for everything. It says in pasuk by an animal that caused damage. It says in kaifer yushas olav. If you you place a kaifer on the animal, I mean olav. Shechai b'ka'amakro says pasuk asher yushas olav. Olav means on the animal, the loy al adam, not on the person. So you want to find. So now that we established that a person is more lenient than an animal pays kaifer and a person doesn't. So let's make a kavachayim that an animal should pay the alvarim. That's why I talk about arbadvarim. A person actually pays 5 things. Nezek, tzar, yibish, boishes. But boishes is only you pay if it's intentional. An animal can never be intentional. So by an animal, we're only talking about 4 things. So therefore, we're talking about 4 things the whole time. Even though by a person, really, it's 5. If Chai Barber Dvorim, a person that's a lenient doesn't pay kaifer yet has that chumrah paying four things. Shoy Shechai Kaifer, the shoy that pays the kaifer ain't it? Surely Chai Barber Dvorim should pay the four things. Or makra. Therefore, it says a passage that a person, if he causes a damage to another person, kasher also can yaso. It says that ish ba'amisa, a person is friend. The loy shoy ba'amisa. It says clearly, when do you pay those four things? If a person, I mean ish ba'amisa, it's but what's it trying to say ish ba'misa? Just say ba'misa. By saying ish is an extra word to tell you that only time you pay these four extra things, for unemployment and all that and pain, is only by an ish and not by a shoy. The shoy ba'misa. Stop the Gemara here. We'll continue tomorrow. Mitzvah. Have a good day, everybody.